My name is Fred Alcott, and at 59 years old, my kids sat me down in my own kitchen and told me I needed to stop calling so much. My son said it the way he says hard things, carefully, like he'd gone over it in the car on the way here. My daughter sat beside him and nodded at the table. I was standing near the counter with a dish towel in my hand. I had rewired the light above that table myself in 1998, and I stood under it while my two children explained, in my own house, that I was too much to deal with. 9 people in that kitchen, counting spouses and my daughter's partner. Not one of them opened their mouth in my corner, not one. So I stopped calling. What neither of them counted on was what I'd do with the silence. Before I go any further, hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I read everyone. Now let me take you back to that Sunday before Christmas, because nothing that happened after it makes any sense without it. I'm a retired electrician, 34 years with the same company out of Guelph, Ontario. I know load capacity and what happens when you push too much current through a line that wasn't built for it. I spent most of my adult life making sure things didn't burn down. That Sunday I had both my kids over, my son Blake and his wife Kelsey, my daughter Monica and her partner, and I started telling an old story. The winter of 2003, when I worked a commercial job in January with a cracked rib, because the site foreman said the schedule didn't wait for hospitals. Blake set his fork down about halfway through. Dad. Almost done. Dad, stop. We know this one. The room shifted. I felt it like you feel weather change, in your hands, not your head. You call me almost every day, he said. I'm in meetings. Kelsey's in meetings. We're stretched thin. He picked his fork back up. Can you just give it a rest? Monica looked at her glass. Her partner looked at the tablecloth. Nobody backed me up. Not one word. I said, okay. I said it like it was nothing. I passed the potatoes and I finished my dinner, and I washed every dish in that kitchen myself while they got their coats. I drove nobody home. Nobody offered to stay. That night I sat at the kitchen table with my phone face up in front of me, and I looked at it for a long time. Then I did exactly what my son asked me to do. The first week, I made excuses the way I'd been making excuses for years. Blake runs a marketing department, 12 people under him, clients calling at all hours. Monica manages 3 dental offices now. Real work, real pressure. I told myself that over eggs in the morning, and I believed most of it. I'd been believing it for a while. My wife Adele passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 3 months from diagnosis to the end, in the back bedroom of this house. After she died, I picked up the phone so the kids wouldn't have to reach too hard. That was my reasoning. Keep the lines open. Keep the family talking. What I didn't notice, until I finally went quiet, was that I'd become the only one holding the line. I noticed other things that first week. The mail comes at 10:15. The furnace clicks on twice between midnight and 6. I could go 4 days without saying a word out loud to another person, and the world absorbed it like it had been expecting this all along. On day 8, I caught myself talking to Adele's photograph on the mantle, and I stopped. Because that's a road you don't start down at 59, when you still have miles to go. So I started keeping track instead. Not out of spite. Out of the same reflex that makes you check a connection you've trusted for 20 years, just to be sure. 11 days in, at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening, my phone rang. Not my son, not my daughter. It was my nephew. Seth has been calling me every Sunday at 6 since he was 19 years old. From his residence at Waterloo. He never misses. He calls to talk about nothing. His course is a professor, who reads off the slide deck, word for word. A bad meal in the cafeteria. He called the Sunday before his father's funeral. He called the Sunday after. His father was my younger brother Les. Les died 4 years ago on the 401, Black Ice near Milton, a transport across the center line. He was 44 years old. He had a union job at the Honda plant in Alliston, and a truck he was always fixing up, and he called me every single day of his adult life, usually from the parking lot at the end of his shift. Hey Fred, you catch the game last night? That was half the calls, just that. Then love you, big brother, and gone. When Les died, Seth was 19. His mother had been out of the picture since he was 12. My son and my daughter sent a card. And then, without anyone deciding anything out loud, they let him drift. He stopped being invited to things. He stopped appearing in photographs. It's remarkable how fast a family closes over an empty space, like ice forming over still water. But Seth called, every Sunday. And he called about nothing. which is another way of saying he called about everything. So on day 11 at 6 in the evening, it was Seth's name on my screen. Uncle Fred, you eat today? Had soup. What kind? The kind from a can. He laughed. He has his dad's laugh. I don't say that out loud, because it costs me something every time I notice it. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about his thermodynamics midterm. I told him about the weather, and then he went quiet. The kind of quiet where someone is deciding whether to say the thing. What? I said. Nothing. Seth. He breathed out slow. My OSAP got recalculated. Dad's life insurance settlement. They counted it as household income this year, which it wasn't. It was a one-time, it doesn't matter. I'm about 12,000 short for next semester. I'm figuring it out. I sat down at the kitchen table. I might take a semester off, he said. Work at the warehouse on Speedvale for a while. Lots of guys do it. I knew what happened to guys who took a semester off. One became two became permanent, and permanent meant a life you ended up in sideways rather than a life you chose. Don't do anything yet, I said. 2 weeks. Don't sign anything with the school. Uncle Fred. Promise me. A long pause. Okay, he said, 2 weeks. We hung up. I sat in the dark kitchen and thought about $12,000 and about what Les would say if he could see who was returning his son's calls, which was nobody. 2 weeks later, I found out something I wasn't supposed to find out. I own the house, the one Adele died in. I bought it in 1991 for $187,000, and I've done every renovation myself. New panels in 2009, the back addition in 2005, a deck I rebuilt board by board the summer before Adele got sick. It's worth somewhere around $780,000 now, which still doesn't feel real to me. I have my RRSP and some savings. 34 years of not spending what I didn't need to spend. A tradesman's savings, that's the whole picture. Second Saturday of the month, I had a part for Blake's old bicycle I'd been storing since they moved. Kelsey had asked me to hold it. I pulled into their driveway. The kitchen window was open. The house alone covers the shortfall, my son was saying. Easily. Especially if we move before the market softens again. A pause. Monica's voice something I couldn't quite catch. I'm not saying now, I'm saying when. He's 59, Moni. These things happen. We're not talking about forever. I stood in that driveway holding a bicycle stem and listened to my 2 children plan the sale of my house while I was still living in it. Not one word about who would look after me. Not one word about Seth. Just the arithmetic of my absence. I set the part down beside the garage door, got in my truck, drove home the long way, and I did not say a word about it, not yet. Hector Gaines has been my lawyer since 2001. He drew up Adele's will at the end. His office is above a bookshop on Wyndham Street, and it always smells like old coffee and paper, and he has never once rushed me through anything in 24 years. I told him I was there about a routine beneficiary update. We went through it, 20 minutes of real work. Then he leaned back. You set this will up in 2016, he said. After Adele. Split evenly between Blake and Monica, with Les listed as contingent, his share now flowing to his estate. He tapped the folder. Given that Les is gone, Seth inherits through his estate in theory. In practice, it gets complicated depending on how that estate was settled. How complicated? Complicated enough that the document may not say what you'd want it to say today. He let that sit. A will is not a permanent statement, Fred. It's a current one. You can rewrite it any Tuesday morning. No one's permission. No notice required. You need to have testamentary capacity, sign in front of 2 witnesses, and that's the end of the formality. I didn't answer that. I'm not suggesting anything, Hector said quietly. I know you're not. I drove home with that sitting in the passenger seat like a person. I didn't act on it, not yet, not until my birthday. My birthday is March 7th. I turned 59. I didn't remind anyone. I don't do that. But it's been the same date for 59 years. 10:52 in the morning, Blake. Happy birthday, Dad. Crazy week. Talk soon. He did not talk soon. He did not call at all. 2:30 in the afternoon. Monica. HBD Dad, love you. 2 exclamation points, a cake emoji, and a $20 e-transfer. Enough for a large double-double at Tim's if I was feeling extravagant. That was it. That was my birthday from the 2 children I raised, drove to hockey practice, co-signed for, and held while their mother died. 29 words and a cartoon cake. I made myself a grilled cheese and ate it standing at the counter. because sitting alone at a table for 6 felt like a bit much. At 4:40, headlights swung into my driveway. Seth got out of his Civic. Rust on the rear quarter panel, the kind you get from 4 Ontario winters and no money to address it. Holding a cake box flat, with both hands like it was something fragile, he had driven 2.5 hours from Waterloo. He had a fluid mechanics test Monday morning. He had baked it himself in the communal kitchen on his floor. It leaned slightly to one side. The icing read "Happy Birthday, Uncle Fred" in letters that ran out of room and got smaller at the end. I stood in the doorway and I could not speak for a moment. "It's ugly," he said. "It's not ugly. It really is." We ate it at the kitchen table. He told me about his semester. He did not say one word about the $12,000, and I noticed that he didn't, and I noticed how carefully he was working not to say it. He left at 8 to drive back. I stood in the driveway and watched his taillights until they turned at the corner. Then I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, got a legal pad and drew a line down the middle. Left column. Every time in 3 years my son or my daughter had actually shown up, physical presence, or a call that wasn't about logistics. Right column. Seth. The left column had 7 entries. 3 of those involved them needing something from me. The right column I stopped counting at 150. He calls 52 Sundays a year. He has not missed one since his father died. I sat with those 2 columns for a long time, and I want to be honest about what I asked myself next, because a man can lie to himself at a kitchen table at midnight. I asked, "Is this about being hurt?" Yes, some of it. I am a 59-year-old man and my son told me to stop calling and it landed somewhere that doesn't fully go away, and I am not going to pretend it didn't. But I asked myself a second question. If Adele walked in right now and I showed her these 2 columns, what would she say? I knew exactly what she'd say. She'd say, "Fred, the paper is wrong. Fix the paper." Not punish them. Fix the paper. The next morning I called Hector. But before I signed anything, I gave them a door. I want that on the record. I'd been silent for 2 months. I broke it to call them both. Blake picked up on the 3rd ring. Background noise. Someone else's office. "Dad, everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I'd like to take you for coffee. This week, any day. I'll drive to the city." "Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Okay, yeah. Let me look at my calendar and text you." He did not text me. A week later, I called Monica. She said things were insane with the clinic expansion and she'd reach out when things settled. She did not reach out. I called Blake one more time. 10 days after that, he said, "Can this wait, Dad? I'm slammed this month." I said, "Sure it can." I hung up the phone. I got out the legal pad and I drew a line through the last word on it. The word was maybe. Hector's office, a Wednesday morning. He went through everything carefully before we began. "You understand we're here to amend the distribution," he said. "I do. And once this is signed and you pass, it goes to probate. Your estate trustee applies for a certificate of appointment in Ontario. That's standard. But the document determines where things go. The document is what matters." He set his pen down. "I want to name something. If you do this and say nothing, they'll find out from a stranger in a room with no way to respond. I've watched that destroy families, Fred. It's a cruel way to do it, even when it feels deserved." "Then it won't be a stranger," I said. "I want you to put them all in a room while I'm still alive and in it. You read it. I answer for it." He studied me for a moment. "That's the harder thing." "I know." We worked for an hour and a half. No conditions, no penalties, no clever clauses. Just percentages. Just the truth in plain language. When we were done, I said the thing I'd been building toward for 2 months. "I'm not punishing anyone, Hector. I'm just being honest on paper." He said, "That tends to be worse." The following Sunday at 6, Seth called, and his voice was flat before he said a word. "I filed the leave of absence," he said. "It's fine. The warehouse starts me next week. I'll come back in September." I knew what September looked like after a leave like this. I'd seen it. "Cancel it," I said. "Uncle Fred." "Seth, listen to me. Cancel it. 2 more weeks." He went quiet then. "You don't have it. I know that. And I want you to know that's not why I call you. It has never been why I call you." "I know that." "Do you actually know that?" "I know it." He started crying then, and he was furious at himself for it, which is a Les thing. Les used to apologize mid-cry, which always made me want to laugh and grieve at the same time. Seth is exactly the same. It's $12,000, he said. It's such a stupid amount. It's a used car, and I hate that I need it. You don't hate needing it, I said. You hate that you can't ask. He didn't say anything. 2 weeks, I said. Please. A long pause. Okay. I hung up and sat in the dark and thought about $12,000 and 34 years of not buying things I didn't need. The next morning I called Hector and changed one number. 6 days before the meeting, my son called me. Blake never calls. Hey, Dad. Very warm, the kind of warm that's working at something. How are you doing? Fine. Good, good. So Gary Pellerin, you know Gary from the Elora Street job. He says he saw your truck outside Hector's place a couple of times. There it is. Gary should watch the road. My son laughed, a laugh with a hook in it. No, totally. Is everything okay health-wise? My health is fine. Good, so it's just routine stuff then. It's my business, Blake. Silence. The warmth drained out of his voice like water through sand. Of course, yeah. It's just, Hector does estate work, so Monica and I were thinking we should probably be in the loop if something structural is changing. Structural. That's the word he used about my life. Blake, I said, do you want to have coffee? Nothing. I asked you twice. I'm asking a third time. Coffee, any day. I'll come to the city. Dad's is not really. Then we don't have anything else to discuss. I hung up on my son for the first time in 35 years. Sat there with the phone warm in my hand. He had finally called me. It took the rumor of a truck parked on Wyndham Street to make it happen. 2 days later, Monica's car was in my driveway. She'd brought a lasagna. She hadn't been through my front door in 14 months. She came in and looked around the way someone looks when they're appraising without wanting to seem like they're appraising. And she said the kitchen looked great. Sit down, Monica. She sat. Garrett and I are just worried about you out here alone, she said. You know how it is. Sometimes people take advantage. Which people? I'm not saying anyone specific. She put her hand on mine. Seth calls you a lot. The clock on the stove ticked. Seth calls me a lot, I repeated. He's 23, Dad. He's at that age where he needs things. And you're a generous man. I just don't want someone putting ideas in your head. I looked at my daughter for a long moment. Monica, I said, when did you last speak to Seth? Her face did something small. Probably Christmas after Les died, she said. Or maybe the summer after. Which summer? She pulled her hand back, and I understood completely what I was looking at. They weren't afraid of losing me. I had already drifted out of their daily lives years ago, and it had cost them a birthday emoji and a $20 e-transfer. They were afraid of losing their share. That is a different fear entirely. Thank you for the lasagna, I said, and I stood up. She left without finishing her coffee. I am going to be honest with you now, in a way that doesn't flatter me. I almost stopped. Because nobody tells you what it's like to do a hard thing when you're nearly 60. You do it while every voice in your head sounds like your own father. You're a bitter man, Fred. You're rewriting your will because your feelings got hurt at dinner. You raised them. Whatever they became, some of that is you. That last one nearly finished me, because it has truth in it. I worked too much. Adele carried this household for years while I was on job sites until dark. When she got sick, I kept showing up to work because the work made sense and cancer didn't. And Blake was in his late 20s, trying to help his mother, while his father hid behind a conduit bender. So who am I exactly to grade anyone on showing up? I sat with Adele's photograph at 2 in the morning and said out loud, "Am I being cruel?" She didn't answer. They don't. That Sunday at 6, Seth called, and he heard it in me before I said a word. What's wrong? Nothing. Uncle Fred. I said, do you think I'm a hard man? A long pause on the line. I think you're the only person who has ever told me the truth to my face, he said. Dad used to say Grandma thought you were stubborn. But Dad said stubborn was just the word people used for someone who didn't change their mind when you wanted them to. He paused. You always said nobody's owed the roof. You help build it or you don't. You said it so many times when I was a kid I used to roll my eyes at it. I think about it now basically every day. There it was. Nobody's owed the roof. You help build it or you don't. I'd been saying it since Les and I were teenagers. I'd just forgotten it applied to me too. Monday morning, I called Hector. I said, let's finish it. Hector's letters went out on cream-colored stationery. The Alcott Estate, Distribution Review. Your attendance is requested. Thursday, April 17th, 10 a.m. That was all it said. A letter like that doesn't need to say more, because to a person who's already run the numbers, it sounds like finally. My son called me 3 times in the 5 days before the meeting. 3 times. I was suddenly extremely easy to reach. So this is getting things in order, he said. Something like that. Right. Smart, proactive. And obviously whatever structure makes sense for the property, we're supportive. The property especially, because there's really only one sensible approach given where values are. Is there? Come on, Dad. We'll talk Thursday. Seth called that Sunday holding his own envelope, confused. Why am I invited to this? Because your family. Uncle Blake's going to be there, Aunt Monica. Come to the meeting, Seth. He went very quiet. I don't want anything, he said. I want you to know that. Whatever this is about, that's not why I call you. That has never been why I call you. I know that. Do you actually know that? Come to the meeting. Thursday, April 17th, 9:55 in the morning. Every one of them parked on Wyndham Street and came up the stairs in good clothes. Blake in a sport coat with a notepad, not a phone, a notepad and a pen, which I will think about until I'm dead, because he brought it to write things down. Monica with her purse in her lap and a small, prepared smile. Seth in a shirt I'd never seen before, sitting nearest the door. Hector's conference room has a maple table. I helped him choose in 2004, a wall clock. One window, and at 10 in the morning in April, the light through it landed on the middle of that table like something spilled. My son took the chair at the far end, not beside me, at the end. He set his notepad down, squared it, uncapped his pen. Dad, I think this is really responsible, he said. Warm, very warm. Monica touched my arm. We're just glad you're doing this now, while everything's clear. While everything's clear, like I'd agreed to a checkup. Hector came in with a single blue folder. He sat. He didn't open it. Before we begin, he said, I want to state for the record that Mr. Alcott underwent a capacity assessment on March 28th, conducted by Dr. Mihan at Guelph General. My son raised a hand, easy smile. Hector, do we really need all this? It's family. We need all this, Hector said. Something moved across my son's face. He looked at me, really looked, for what felt like the first time in years. I watched him try to read me and fail. The will was amended on April 2nd, Hector said. Blake's pen stopped. Amended, he said. Amended. Executed April 2nd, witnessed, notarized. I'll read the distribution now. Blake leaned forward. Wait. To Seth Alcott. The residence at 44 Creighton Avenue, Guelph, together with associated contents and fixtures, conveyed in trust until age 25, at which point title transfers outright. Additionally, an education trust in the amount of $12,000 disbursed directly to the University of Waterloo. Seth had gone completely white. He was shaking his head, no, and he reached across the table with one hand, palm up, like a person trying to stop traffic. Uncle Fred, no. To Blake Alcott and Monica Alcott, the residuary estate divided equally, share and share alike. Then Hector stopped and let it settle. My son did the arithmetic. I watched him do it. I watched a 45-minute drive in good clothes turn in about 3 seconds into a number that was considerably smaller than the one he'd been building around. That can't, Monica's voice cracked. Dad, that's the house. Mom died in that house. I know, I said. I was there. My son hadn't spoken. He was staring at the folder. His jaw was working. Then he looked up at me. Is this about Christmas? He said, very quiet. Almost nothing. And I said the only true thing I had. Blake, you told me I was calling too much. I let it sit. I finally listened. My son stood up fast. The notepad slid off the table. This is insane. The warmth was entirely gone. You're rewriting your will, Dad, do you hear yourself? You're rewriting your will because we told you to call less. Sit down, Blake. You fell last month. I was in that hospital. We came. You did, I said. You also asked the attending nurse whether there was documentation of cognitive changes before you asked if I was going to be all right. Monica looked at her hands. I heard you through the curtain, I said. Blake put both fists on the table and leaned across it. We are your children. You are, I said. Nothing in that document changes that. He gets the house. He pointed at Seth. He gets the house and the land over your own kids. Say his name. What? You've said he twice. Say his name. Blake stopped. Monica was crying now, real tears. I don't doubt they were real. Dad, we have careers. We have mortgages and responsibilities. We can't be available every time you want to talk. And you sat there and kept score? Yes, I said. That stopped her cold. I kept score. I wrote it on a legal pad, 2 columns. I kept my hands flat on the maple. Monica, in 3 years you showed up here 7 times. 3 of those times were because you needed something from me. I counted because I couldn't believe it either. It isn't fair, I said. It's accurate. Blake had his hand over his mouth. He was looking at Seth, the way you look at something you've driven past 100 times and never actually seen. Then Seth stood up. The room went still. I don't want it. His voice was wrecked. He was looking straight at me. Grandpa, Uncle Fred, I don't want the house. I don't want any of it, please. This is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly. He pressed his hands over his face for a moment. Do you know what it's going to be like for the rest of my life? Being the one who got the house. He looked at Blake, at Monica. I called you because you're the only piece of my dad that's still here, he said. That's the whole reason. Take it back. The room held very still. Seth, I said, sit down. Take it back. Sit down. He sat, his hands were shaking on the table. You just told a room full of people you don't want it, I said, in front of a lawyer, on the record. Do you understand what you just did? He shook his head. You proved I was right. Hector quietly wrote something down. Every Sunday, for 4 years, I said, you called when there was nothing to inherit. You called when you thought I was a retired electrician with a modest RRSP and a house that might be worth something someday. You called about nothing. You called because your father taught you to. I looked down the table. That is what I am leaving it to. Monica had gone perfectly still. Blake was sitting back down slowly, hands still over his mouth, staring at his nephew like he was seeing him for the first time. Which, I suppose, he was. One more item, Hector said. He slid a single page from the folder. Mr. Alcott was assessed by Dr. Meehan on March 28th, 2 weeks before the fall, not after. Full cognitive workup. He performed in the 91st percentile for his age cohort. He set the page down. The amendment was executed April 2nd. The fall occurred April 19th. I draw your attention to the sequence. Blake looked at the page, then at his hands. There are 2 independent witnesses and a notary on file. Mr. Alcott answered competency questions on the record, unprompted. There is no undue influence. The beneficiary didn't know any of this was happening. There is no incapacity. There is no unusual language in this document because your father specifically instructed me not to write any. Hector folded his hands. I mention all of this because in my experience, this is the moment someone uses the word contest. Save the retainer. It's airtight. It's also, as your father requested, entirely boring. Blake sat there. I watched something go out of him, not the anger, the plan, the calculations behind his eyes that had been running since the word amended. He didn't have anything. He stood up slowly this time. He picked up his notepad. He looked at me. Something moved across his face that I hadn't seen since he was maybe 10 years old, and I caught him in a lie about where he'd been after school. Not anger. Something much older. Shame. He walked out, the door closed, and the clock kept ticking. Nobody won anything that day. I want to be honest about that. I drove home alone and sat in my truck in my own driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. Then I sat on the couch in my good shirt and put my head in my hands. You do not get to feel triumphant when you break your son. That's just the truth of it, and I knew it going in. My daughter texted 9 days later, 600 words. She said I had always preferred Les over her. She said Adele would be ashamed of what I'd done. She said I measured love like a load calculation and would rather be right than have a family. That one landed, because there's a version of me where it's true. I typed 4 different replies. I deleted them all. What I finally sent was this: Monica, I love you. That has never once been in question. The door here is open every Sunday at 6. I'll be here, Dad. She didn't answer, but she didn't block me. Seth did not take the leave of absence. The $12,000 went directly to Waterloo. so he never touched a dollar of it himself. That was his condition. He made Hector put it in writing, which is the most less thing he has ever done. He's finishing his third year now. Civil engineering. He wants to work on infrastructure, bridges, the things designed to carry weight over a long time. He still hasn't said much about the house. Told me he doesn't want to live in it, and I've told him he doesn't have to. I just told him there's a pencil mark on the door frame in the back hall, where I measured Les was when he was 8 years old, and Les was so proud of that mark he made me swear I'd never paint over it. Seth drove down on a Saturday in October. He stood in the hallway with 2 fingers on that pencil line for about 4 minutes, and didn't say a word. I stood in the kitchen and let him have it. Okay, he said finally. That was the whole conversation about a house and a lifetime. He still calls every Sunday at 6. He called last month to tell me there was a raccoon living in his building's ventilation system, and the whole floor could hear it moving around at 3 in the morning, and he was laughing so hard he could barely get it out. And neither of us said the thing we were both thinking about a man who used to call me from a parking lot in Alliston about the exact same kind of problem. We didn't have to say it. Some things get carried forward without any paperwork at all. Then, on the 3rd Sunday in November, at 4 minutes past 6, my phone rang. Not Seth. Blake. I sat down on the arm of the couch. Hey, Dad. Hey. How was your week? And my son, who has a marketing department and a condo mortgage and debt he still hasn't fully told me about his week. He told me his biggest client canceled by email after 3 rescheduled calls. He told me Kelsey signed them up for a Learn to Curl League, and he has never in his life held a broom with intention. He told me there's a squirrel in the wall of their spare room, and the building super says it's not their problem, and Kelsey says it absolutely is. It went 11 minutes. It was about nothing. It was the best 11 minutes I'd had in years. That's about it, he said. That's the whole call. That's a good call. He cleared his throat. Next Sunday, same time. He calls most weeks now. Not everyone. He misses some, and he's not a different man. He's the same person with the same mortgage and the same pressure and the same things he doesn't know how to say yet. But he calls on Sunday evenings, and he calls about nothing. And I have learned to tell the difference between a quiet phone and an empty life. Monica hasn't called. Not yet. But at Christmas she sent a card, real cardstock, her own handwriting, and inside it she wrote, "I'm still figuring this out. I'm still your daughter." I put it on the mantle beside Adele's photograph. It's still there. That's the truest thing she sent me in years, and I will take it. I'm going to be 60 in March. Seth is already planning the cake and has informed me it will be ugly, and that I do not get a vote on this. Blake asked. He actually asked. The way a man asks when he understands he might be told no, if he could come by the weekend after. I told him yes. I'll always tell him yes. That was never the question. I've sent Monica an invitation, and I'll send it again next year, and the year after that, for as many years as I get. The door here is open every Sunday at 6. I spent 34 years as an electrician. I know that current only flows when the circuit is complete. I know what happens when one side stops carrying its load. Eventually something fails. Not loudly, not all at once. Just quietly, in the dark, in a place nobody was watching closely enough. When I finally stopped calling, I found out what I was worth to the people I'd raised. That's a hard thing to learn at 59 years old. It is also the last honest thing that anybody gives you. So here's what I'll leave you with. If someone has told you that you're too much, calling too often, taking up too much space in their busy schedule, being more than they want to handle, I want you to hear this from a retired electrician in Guelph, Ontario. Your voice is not a burden, and you are allowed to stop explaining yourself. If this story found you tonight, hit like so it finds somebody else sitting beside a quiet phone. Subscribe, because there's another one in the description. It's about the Sunday my daughter finally called back. That one's harder, but I'll tell it. I'll see you there. It's almost 6.